focused organization. Also, I wanted to start by saying a big thank you to our two sponsors, so Hootsuite for giving us this space to use tonight, and Vision Critical for providing those lovely drinks that you're all drinking right now. Although if you would like more than that first drink, we do have a cash bar at the back, and also Amy is selling tickets on cards if you need a receipt for your expense accounts. I think Amy deserves a clap for that. Okay, so I am Brittany Hobbs. I am the Chairman Director of Research for a company called PH1 Media. I'm also one of the organizers for tonight. A couple of housekeeping things. So if anyone is being social tonight, feel free to tag us at CX Challenges. We'd love to continue the conversation as widely as we possibly can. Also, our Wi-Fi is HootGuest and password is OwlsHoot or OwlShoot, depending on how you feel like reading that. So, first of all, actually I'm gonna go backwards for a second. So I wanted to sort of start with what this event is. So I'm not sure how many of you came to our last event, which was our inaugural event. Really what we're trying to do with these CX Challenges events is really start a conversation within our organization or within our industry about how can we be more customer focused and customer centric in the work that we're doing. So the first one was really just quite broad. It was how are we doing CX and customer centricity within our work that we've got going on. So we talked about a couple of case studies, we talked about a couple of learnings, things that went well, things that did not go well, and really just try to start a conversation. More importantly is throughout this series, we want to bring you information and education, but also really continue those conversations so that we can keep learning from each other as we look at what are the opportunities within CX beyond just user experience and beyond just kind of traditional market research or design, and be more collaborative across industries. So tonight, we're talking about becoming a CX-focused organization. That topic came out of that first conversation. A big part of it was this question of what is CX and what does it mean to be a CX-focused organization? How do we bring these practices, these toolkits, and this mindset into the work that we're doing, and how are we selling it into our organizations that maybe don't understand the value of it or don't know what it is? So that's why we wanted to have this conversation today. So I'm not sure how many of you filled out our pre-event survey. Not as many as I would have expected, considering how many researchers are in this room right now. So next time, just let's all pat each other on the back and help each other out here. Of the people who did fill it out though, we wanted to know a little bit about if we continue to bring these events, if we want to grow this conversation, how can we do that in the best way possible? So really simply, we wanted to know, do you want to come together and be in person in an evening after work? People very much were interested in that, so expect more of these events like tonight. The other things that were kind of interesting is in-person workshops, 2 hours, also a big winner. So, we'll continue to ask these questions, but we really want feedback as we try to be more customer-centric ourselves. How can we grow as a community, and how can we build things that are meaningful and important to each of us? So the other thing that was kind of interesting is we asked about which topics in customer experience or CX are important to everybody. So we wanted to know of the topics that we think are interesting, that we want to talk about and share and teach about. Which ones are interesting and important to all of you? The things that people said were how to create a CX strategy, how to measure CX, case studies from CX leading organizations, and slightly below that is learning about CX tools and toolkits. So there's some really interesting overlapping things in that I think are important, and some questions that I think are interesting for us to start this dialogue today with. And the first question is, how can you become an organization that prioritizes customer experience? So by a show of hands, how many people here today feel like you are working at an organization that prioritizes customer experience in a meaningful way? Okay. So some very short hands up and a couple confused looks. There's a surprising lack of emphatic hands up here. So when you ask that question, in my experience, there's sort of two answers. Either people are saying, you know what, we can do better. We're doing it a little, but not in a way that I feel confident in being able to say, like, yes, we're doing this. And the other side is, we're already customer-centric. We're doing it, we're great. High five us. So my question to that is, if you're a we can do better, the question is how? At a very broad, sort of high-level way of looking at that, the questions we can start asking, or the way that you can start talking about it is, you know, just listening to our customers. Better data. Understanding personas that are based on more than just, you know, a made-up name, a made-up time and place, and a made-up story. And really just being more user-friendly. So kind of, these are the low-hanging fruits of customer experience. And if you're we already are customer-centric, then the question becomes why? Why do you know that you are? Why do you think you are? And usually the answers become, well, we know who our customers are. We have a high NPS score. Our sales are good, and we already send surveys, so we're doing it. We got this. The big thing about that is that customer centricity is very vague, and it's really specific to who you're asking and what they define as customer centricity or customer experience. So that, I believe, is probably the root of what all of us are challenged with today and why so many of you wanted to come here tonight. I believe that prioritizing customer experience ends up becoming about challenging the assumptions that you think that you believe about your customers already. So some of those questions become, what role do we play in our customers' lives? Why do potential customers not choose us? When do we frustrate even our most loyal customers? And how can we regain the trust of people who have left us? Really just challenging some of the assumptions that you already have and looking beyond those simple questions that you already are asking. And also prioritizing CX methods. So these are the questions that we asked everybody who did complete the survey about, are they doing these tools or using these tools and these methods? So are you considering the customer's experience when creating new strategies? So that can be something as simple as, are you going out and actually talking one-on-one with your customers before you're deciding what your strategy for the year is going to be? Are you testing your new feature, your potential new features, but not looking at the features themselves, asking how will this fit within their lives and what will it solve for them and what are those potential needs that it's addressing, and then determining what features come out of that. The next one is really research your customers' needs and expectations. So I asked this question at the first event, and I'd love to know, kind of by show of hands tonight, how many of you are familiar with jobs to be done? Okay. And how many of you implement it in your work in practice? Okay. Some very short hands again, and a couple of shakes. So really it's about how can we start asking our questions of our users, or even people who don't use our products. How do we start asking some questions that don't put our products or services at the forefront, and really just try and understand people's, how that product or service would fit within their life, but agnostic to who you are, so that you can really understand what are those needs that are not being met, what are those things that people care the most about that maybe you weren't even aware of, or maybe they're using your product in a way you never thought that they were. Testing new features, products, services, your customers before launching. You would think that would be quite simple and pretty straightforward, but based on the responses, I was surprised at how many people aren't actually even doing that very consistently. And I think it really comes down to time and budget. People thinking that It's going to take a lot of time to test new features. It's going to take a lot of time to have to then do new rounds of design and new rounds of changes based on what people's experiences are. But if you don't actually put something in front of people and ask them how they would use it and have them use it without you leading them, they're going to have to completely redesign whatever you were doing anyways. So we're working on a project right now where they built out this whole system that was never tested, and now they're faced with this issue of having to completely rethink that product less than a year after relaunching it. And then understand how customers move between services or features. So this is sort of that highly buzzwordy thing now of customer journey mapping. But I think it really comes down to the root of what customer experience is we're not just looking at the usability or user experience of a specific product. We're looking at, we as customer experience practitioners have to look at how do people move between systems and products, and what is that ultimate experience that you're creating for them? What is that story, that narrative that they go through? And then just measuring that experience, measuring the experience that they're going through, understanding what are those micro moments that you're creating and how can you leverage or enhance those. So this is how people responded in terms of what is being done always or very consistently, sometimes, rarely, and never. The thing to me is measuring those micro moments and experiences had a very high never ranking. Very few people are doing that. And then same with rarely. In terms of researching customers' expectations and needs, sometimes, which you kind of would expect, but all in all, there were very low rankings, really always, where what this is telling me is that there is very little practice of trying to implement customer experience strategies or customer centricity within organizations on more than a project basis. So again, how do we build that into our organizations? So that was a little bit about my thoughts on that, why I thought this topic is really important, really interesting, and why I'm happy that everyone is here and also had a little bit of a say in some of that data. What I would love to do is just really quickly, before we invite our three panelists to come and give their side of it and what they think the issues are and how we can resolve it within organizations, is just take a super quick break. I know we had a little bit of a longer lead time before, but what I'd love for everyone to do is get up, if you still need to get a drink, the bar is open, but chat with someone new. Talk with someone who's outside of your organization and just sort of find out what they're doing in terms of customer centricity and how they're trying to implement it within the organization. And we'll be back for the panel in about 10 minutes.